They were never exactly broke, but they were always, perpetually, out of time. That was the invisible pressure gripping Elias and his wife, Clara. It was not the absence of money that truly haunted them, it was the relentless, exhausting cycle that demanded every ounce of their energy just to maintain the starting line. Elias felt the sharp, metallic tang of frustration whenever he reviewed their accounts late at night. He had worked the relentless overtime, taken the specialist courses, and followed every piece of expert advice religiously, yet every strategic financial maneuver they executed seemed to be instantly countered by an equal and opposite force: a sudden, catastrophic car repair, an urgent, uninsured medical bill for a distant relative, or an unexpected, punitive tax adjustment. Their breakthrough moments were always ephemeral, brief glimpses of solvency that vanished like heat haze on asphalt. They had achieved a significant milestone just 3 months prior, paying down a massive percentage of their old debt, only to watch a recent leak necessitate a full roof replacement that erased the entire gain and then some. Elias stared at the glowing spreadsheet, the green numbers of profit quickly swallowed by the angry red figures of necessary expenditure. Why does maximum, focused effort consistently yield minimal traction? This central, gnawing paradox, the deep, internal confusion of executing every step correctly only to end up exactly where they started, was the silent, shared secret in their quiet, well-maintained suburban home. They looked stable and financially responsible on paper, yet internally, they lived in a constant state of resource depletion. They had conquered significant physical challenges in their lives, navigated career changes, and learned demanding skills, but this invisible ceiling, this constant loop of financial near-misses and enforced resets, defied all logic and systematically destroyed their motivation. Elias often wondered if the universe simply had a fixed limit set for their personal prosperity, a boundary they were meant to bump against forever. Clara watched him from the doorway, observing the familiar rigid set of his shoulders as he battled the numbers that refused to cooperate. She understood this exhaustion, but lately, a different kind of curiosity had begun to surface in her mind, moving past the simple frustration and into the realm of pattern recognition. The root of their issue, she realized, was not the events themselves, but the predictable, almost choreographed, emotional response they always had to those events. She remembered vividly, years ago, when she had first earned a substantial bonus from a high-stakes project. She had been 19, ecstatic, holding a check that represented more freedom than she had ever imagined possible. Within days, her father's antique watch, a non-negotiable family heirloom, suddenly needed a highly specialized, expensive repair that consumed exactly 95% of that bonus. She recalled the relief, not the regret, she had felt when the money was gone, the profound sense of safety that accompanied the return to being merely comfortable, to having just enough. It felt less vulnerable to have nothing left to lose, a strange, inverted sense of protection. She hadn't been poor, ever, but her parents had operated from a constant emotional stance of impending shortage, treating money not as a tool for leverage, but as a dangerous liability that, if left unattended, would inevitably attract disaster or envy. This subtle, pervasive emotional conditioning, that abundance was inherently temporary and ultimately painful, had been a deep, silent lesson ingested long before she had ever signed a bank account agreement. That identity, the person who was always struggling but always surviving, was deeply ingrained. This inherited belief system manifested years later in subtle, unconscious choices whenever they accumulated a surplus. The moment the combined checking and savings account crossed a certain invisible threshold, a tension would bloom between Elias and Clara. Elias would suddenly become obsessed with a new, high-risk investment opportunity, a speculative purchase or an aggressive portfolio shift that invariably introduced high volatility. Clara, on the other hand, would become hyper-aware of their aging possessions, the slightly worn couch, the car that might need new tires next year, and initiate a premature, expensive replacement cycle, justifying it as necessary preventative maintenance. These were not malicious decisions, they were the instinctive movements of an identity attempting to correct itself, to return to the familiar, if painful, state of stuck. They were unconsciously sabotaging their own financial breakthroughs, not out of stupidity or poor planning, but because the psychological weight of sustained, comfortable abundance felt fundamentally incompatible with who they believed they were supposed to be. They had been conditioned to chase effort, not outcome. The struggle itself was the identity marker. One rain-swept Tuesday, after a relatively successful month had been instantly negated by a mandatory, sudden increase in their insurance premiums, Elias slammed his ledger shut, the sound echoing sharply in the silence. Clara did not flinch, she simply observed the mechanical, exhausted nature of his response. She finally spoke, her voice quiet but deliberate. "It's not that we lack the money, Elias. It's that we are terrified of keeping it." That word, addicted, struck them both with its raw accuracy. The recognition was the catalyst, it was the exact internal adjustment they needed, changing how opportunities and challenges responded to them. Once the cycle was clearly visible, once they understood their internal commitment to the narrative of, just barely making it, it could no longer operate in the dark. They consciously chose to treat the surplus not as a pending problem requiring immediate dispersal, but as a foundational resource meant for quiet consolidation. They shifted their emotional response from defensive reaction to calm acceptance. They learned that the most powerful thing they owned was not their discipline or their effort, but the authority to redefine their deepest identity. The question now was simple, vast, and silent: if I refuse to react, what new world must form around the vacuum of my certainty?